How's everyone going here? Welcome back to another camera comparison video. Today I've got the OnePlus 9 Pro, and I figure with OnePlus playing up their partnership with Hasselblad and the performance of the cameras on the OnePlus 9 Pro, what better smartphone to compare it to than the Google Pixel 5, which is arguably the best point-and-shoot smartphone camera here on the market today. And also, since they're playing up their goal of going towards more neutral or natural looking color tones with the color science and the calibration that they're working on with Hasselblad, the Pixel 5 is also known for very neutral and natural colors. So I think this will be a very good camera comparison here. And if OnePlus can actually prove it can hang with the Pixel 5, I think it really provides a validation of their partnership here with Hasselblad and for how much they're really playing up and hyping up the cameras on the OnePlus 9 Pro. So just as a caveat, all the photos and videos taken on the OnePlus 9 Pro were after the second camera update. And I know they've pushed out a couple more updates since then, so I'll do more camera comparisons going forward with the latest updates. But just to let you know, this is with the second of, I think, 4 updates as of the recording of this video. And before I move on to showing you all the photos and videos, and I did take a bunch of them in both good and low light conditions, I kind of want to give you some thoughts, maybe some cues to look at and look out for while you're checking out all the photos and videos and deciding if you maybe agree or disagree with me. So if you don't want to bias yourself going into looking at all the photos and videos, you might want to just skip ahead and come back to this part if you want to hear my thoughts on it. I normally do this at the end, but I figured let's just get it done in the beginning. So again, if you don't want to bias yourself, you might want to skip this portion and come back to it. So after being able to play with the OnePlus 9 Pro for a bit in my camera test video, and that was just after the first update, I came away pretty impressed, and I thought the photos and videos looked a lot better than I was expecting. And after comparing it directly to the Pixel 5, I think I'm even more impressed. I think in a lot of the photos and video, the OnePlus 9 Pro was able to hang with the Pixel 5 very well. It produced almost the same amount of detail, and the color tones were looking very good as well. And even better in some situations, because in some afternoon light, the Pixel 5 tends to cast a more amber or orangish kind of light onto some of the photos. You can see there with some of the flowers later on. The OnePlus 9 Pro did a very good job of balancing that out a little bit better, in my opinion. Maybe too much and not quite what it looked like, but a little bit more accurate than the Pixel 5 did. So in a lot of scenarios, I was really impressed with the OnePlus 9 Pro. And it's not all perfect for the OnePlus 9 Pro. It is a little bit inconsistent, and I do see some over sharpening in some of the photos. I tend to see this when taking pictures of more lighter color tones, like the white cherry blossoms that you're going to see later on, and some really bright afternoon sunlight. And that makes sense. That's probably where you're going to see some sharpening if you're going to do it. And so I think OnePlus needs to dial that back in some of those situations. But in most of the photos, I didn't really see that over sharpening. It was just, again, with really lighter color tones on bright light. And that kind of makes sense, but maybe they can kind of correct that and balance that out a little bit in some more future updates. And going back to consistency, I think OnePlus has to definitely work on that, because I had to work a little bit harder to get the right photos that I wanted out of it, more so than the Pixel 5. So a little bit more takes, a little bit more playing with the focus and everything else to get the same equivalent photo that I got on the Pixel 5. But it is doable. You just have to have a little bit more patience. It's not as cumbersome as something like a Sony Xperia, where you're going to probably want to go into a manual mode. It just takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more potential shots and takes than it does with the Pixel 5. So overall consistency and overall look and performance, I still like the Pixel 5, but I think the OnePlus 9 Pro really surprised me at how well it was able to keep up with the Pixel 5. It just took a little bit more work, and I think they got to balance out some more consistency across all of their photos. And maybe the last observation that you might want to look out for in the photos and videos is the color tones and the color science. And even though the OnePlus 9 Pro is leaning towards more natural colors, especially in the blues, it's actually doing a pretty good job. It's just a little bit more boosted than the Pixel 5, but still much more neutral than other phones like Samsung. I think they still have to work on some of their reproduction of the green colors. It can look pretty good in most photos, but in some photos it can look still kind of boosted, a little bit more enhanced than I tend to like it, and definitely not what I was seeing with my own eyes. The reds, it still crushes. The Pixel 5 does a little bit better job in picking up details in bright red colors. Most phones will struggle with that, but hopefully that's an area that OnePlus can also pay attention to. So again, those are just some of my initial observations and things you might want to look out for as you're checking out all the photos and videos. Let me know if you agree or disagree after viewing them all in a comment down below. So go ahead and check out all the photos and videos and let me know what you think. Everyone, so I'm in the park testing out the video on the OnePlus 9 Pro and the Pixel 5. Starting out with the ultra wide angle lens at 1080p 30 frames per second. I'm just going to pan around so you can see what this looks like here on each of these ultra wide angle cameras. Check out the color, any color differences, check out the field of view. And as far as color accuracy, since OnePlus made a big deal about that, it's actually looking quite good. The sky on both look pretty accurate. The trees on the left look pretty good. The shadows are lifted up nicely. But if you look at these bushes here on the right, the OnePlus is a little bit more boosted than the Pixel, although the Pixel is probably a little bit more muted than what I'm actually seeing. So the color in those bushes are maybe somewhere in between, but it's tough to see just on the viewfinder, just given the differences in the display panels. But just some quick observations here on the color accuracy and look between both of these. But I'll go ahead and move between the main lens on the OnePlus and now on the Pixel. So here is the main lens on each. Again, I'll pan around to give you a view for what that looks like here on each of these cameras here. And let's go ahead and pan over here to the right and we'll test zoom here on that cell tower. So let's move into 3.3 times telephoto on the OnePlus, 2 times digital on the Pixel. I can even move that into about 3 times on the Pixel as well. And move into a max, let's see, 10 times there on the OnePlus. Looking actually pretty clear and steady. Much clearer after this second camera update. After the first update, this was really noisy. If you go back to my original camera test, same zoom at 10 times. So it looks like OnePlus has actually cleared up some of those zoom issues that they said in those release notes on that second update, which is good to see. And of course, it has that audio feature where when I zoom into the subject in the distance, it's going to focus the audio on that. So I'm probably muted as far as my voice is from the OnePlus. Let's go to full 5 times zoom here on the Pixel so you can compare that. Both are looking really steady and really clear here, but clearly the advantage in zoom on the OnePlus. Let's go ahead and back out to 1 times on each and test autofocus here on the post. And let's see there. So pretty quick autofocus here from the OnePlus. A little slow on the refocus, honestly, but quick on the focus. And let's go with the Pixel 5. Really fast autofocus and refocus away here. Okay, and let's go ahead and see if we can go ahead and test the stabilization here on each. Walking down the stairs, through the path. Both should be pretty well stabilized here, but let me know if you see any kind of differences. And we'll pull up here at the end, pan up into the sky and see how the exposure changes for this bright afternoon light. Everyone, so we're back with the same test, this time at 4K, 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each. And again, I'll pan around a little bit to give you a feel for what this looks like here on the ultra wide angle cameras on both in 4K. And let's go ahead and move into the main lens on each. So there is the OnePlus, and then on the Pixel, both pretty smooth transitions, and color reproduction seems to be about the same on each, although the OnePlus maybe in this lens might be pumping up the color a little bit. Hard to tell just looking at this AMOLED display. But again, panning around, give you a feel for what these main cameras look like here. And let's move over here to the right, test the zoom again on the cell tower in 4K. 2 times on the OnePlus, 2 times on the Pixel. And let's see, again, well, let's go back to 5 times. If I can get there, 5 times on the OnePlus and max 5 times here on the Pixel. Pixel's looking a little bit clearer, but both are pretty steady. And let's move into max 10 times there on the OnePlus. This is definitely more grainy than it was at 1080p at this same 10 times zoom. So looks like OnePlus still has some work to do here in 4K to clean that up, but the 1080p footage looked a lot better. They could be clearing this up in post. What I'm seeing here on the viewfinder is it's more grainy. So let's go ahead and back out to 1 times on each. Test autofocus here in 4K on the post, first with the OnePlus. Eventually focuses up and refocuses away. So you can see it focus, it's a little bit slow. Honestly, autofocus, it gets there, but it's definitely not immediate. And as you saw in the 1080p footage, sometimes it gets hung up on the focus. Here we go with the Pixel, still really nice and snappy here in 4K. And let's go ahead and test stabilization in 4K. They both should be stabilized here in 4K. as I walk down the stairs. So this should be looking pretty good on each, but do let me know what you see. And again, we'll pull up here and point up into the afternoon sky and see how it handles the changing light. So here's a quick test of the super stable stabilization mode on the OnePlus 9 Pro up against the active stabilization on the Pixel. Obviously I'm just walking, so it's not really stressing this out too much, but let's go ahead and jog a little bit to stress out the stabilization and see how well it holds up here. So there's just a quick test on these stabilization modes on these two phones. So we're in the park testing out the front-facing cameras on the OnePlus 9 Pro and the Pixel 5. They both can shoot only in 1080p resolution, but the OnePlus 9 Pro can go up to 60 frames per second from the front-facing camera. And off the bat, as you can see, the OnePlus 9 Pro has a much narrower field of view. You can't fit as much in the frame as the Pixel. And I don't really see any options in the settings on the camera to turn off stabilization to eliminate that crop. But I'll check again, but I'm not seeing that. So just take a note, if you like to use a front-facing camera, you're going to get a really narrow field of view here on the OnePlus 9 Pro. So let's go ahead and pan around so you can see how each of these cameras handle the changing lighting conditions. With the sun directly behind me now, you can see what that does to the image quality and how that blows out the sky there, which is pretty normal. And we'll pan around this way, and we'll have the sun in front of me, and you can see the exposure adjusts much better there. Just some shadows on my face, obviously, but you can see the sky is much better exposed this way. And we'll go ahead and walk to test stabilization on each of these front-facing cameras. So there's just a quick test of the front-facing cameras on the OnePlus 9 Pro and the Pixel 5. Let me know what you think. Hey everyone, so here's a quick test with the OnePlus 9 Pro front-facing camera at 1080p 60 frames per second. The Pixel 5 is still at 1080p 30, that's the max resolution and frame rate that it has. But this is probably, you're not gonna get the real full effect of the 60 frames per second just because this video ultimately will be exported at 30 frames. But you might see some differences here, so I just wanted to do some quick footage here. And I'll try to pan around and get some motion going so you can see the full effect of that 60 frames, but we'll also walk to see if this is stabilized at all. So just a quick test of the OnePlus 9 Pro at 60 frames per second from the front-facing camera. Everyone, so here's a low light video test from the OnePlus 9 Pro and Google Pixel 5, starting out at 1080p 30 frames per second with the ultra wide angle lens on each. So pan around here to give you a feel for what these ultra wide angle cameras look like, field of view, everything else in this low light scene here. And I'll go ahead and actually move into the main lens on each. So OnePlus, Pixel, and I'll pan up into that bright light so you can see how each of these cameras handle really bright light like that. And the OnePlus is flaring that out a little bit more than the Pixel is, but that's a really bright light and it's going to happen on pretty much any phone, just matters to what degree. And we'll go ahead and test a little bit of zoom here in low light. So 3.3 times optical telephoto zoom from the OnePlus, and we'll go 2 times digital on the Pixel. You can go up to a max 10 times digital zoom on the OnePlus, and that's pretty grainy here in low light, not nearly as grainy as it was during the day, and max 5 times digital zoom there on the Pixel. So we'll go ahead and back them both out here to 1 times, and we'll pan around this way and we'll start walking to test stabilization. And like I always do, we'll see how these phones handle being in a good lighting area just like that, and how they look as we move over to this much darker area here around the corner. And so just looking at the viewfinder, they're both brightening up the scene much more than it really is, what I can see here with my naked eye. The OnePlus actually might be a little bit brighter, but that could just be the display. Let's go ahead and pan up into the night sky, which is fairly dark. Maybe got a couple stars out there. You can see a little bit of cloud there. Can make out a little bit more cloud definition maybe on the OnePlus. And let's go ahead and pan over here to the left where there's a little bit more light, so you can see what that looks like here in 1080p. Everyone, so we're back with the same test, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each. And again, I'll pan around to give you a feel for how these ultra wide angle lenses compare this time in 4K. You can see how it does into that bright light over there, but let's go ahead and move over into the main lens now. So there we go on the OnePlus and on the Pixel. And I'll pan up so you can see again how this main lens handles that bright light. All in all, not too bad considering how bright that light is really. And we'll test some zoom real quick. So 2 times on the OnePlus and on the Pixel. Let's go to a max 10 times. Still a bit grainy on the OnePlus. 5 times on the Pixel. So moving back to the main 1 times here on each, and we'll pan this way and we'll do our stabilization test again, as well as see how the cameras handle the light transition from that really bright scene over to a much darker scene, but this time in 4K, which tends to be darker than 1080p full HD, so pay attention to that. Also pay attention to see if you're seeing any kind of micro jitters as I'm walking here, which is pretty typical in low light. But again, in the viewfinder, at least what I'm seeing, both phones seem to be trying to brighten up the scene much more than it really is, even in 4K. And we'll walk over here and pull up like we did last time and pan up into the night sky. You can see what that looks like here. And again, a little bit more cloud definition, at least what I'm seeing in the viewfinder from the OnePlus. And we'll pan over here to the left again, where there's a little bit more light to let you see what this now looks like here in 4K. Everyone, so we're taking a look at the Nightscape video on the OnePlus 9 Pro and how that compares to the standard 1080p video on the Pixel 5. So obviously Nightscape, as it implies, tries to brighten up the scene much more than normal. So if you're in a really dark situation, this could be useful if you at least want to see what you're filming, and it limits you to 1080p, so that's why I'm comparing it to the Pixel 5's 1080p footage as well. As you can see here, it's pretty dark out here, and the OnePlus is definitely brightening everything up a lot more. And let's even pan up into that dark night sky. And yeah, much brighter there on the OnePlus, but definitely at the expense of quite a bit of noise there. But again, if you're in a pretty dark area and you don't want to just blare your flash, this could be a solution so you can at least see what you're filming. So again, this is the Nightscape feature on the OnePlus 9 Pro and the standard 1080p footage on the Pixel 5. Hi friends, so here's some low-light video from the front-facing cameras of the OnePlus 9 Pro and Google Pixel 5. This is at 1080p 30 frames per second. The OnePlus 9 Pro can shoot up to 60 frames, but I'm going to keep everything the same here. And this is my usual testing spot for these videos. I like to start out with some good amount of lighting around me, like you can see here. I'll pan around so you can see how the front-facing cameras handle those bright lights around me. And we'll go ahead and start walking to test the stabilization and what that looks like here in low light, especially as we walk over to this darker area. So, you know me, I like to test how these camera phones handle this lighting transition. And so it's all well and good to do well in fairly good light conditions like that, but how does it start to degrade, or maybe not? I mean, how does it handle this darker light here that you're seeing right now? I also have a fountain to the right of me, so we'll see how the mics handle the audio and the noise of the fountain against the sound of my voice here. But I want to go ahead and pan around this way so you can see the really bright lights behind me. Those are even more intense than the ones before. So you can see how the front-facing cameras are handling that, and they're flying them out a bit, but not really too bad. Those are just really, really bright lights. And we'll go ahead and pan over here and finish this up in the darker area so you can compare them next to each other here in this situation. So I think we're just gonna wrap this video up, and I hope you enjoyed all the photos and videos. And drop a comment and let me know which one you thought did better here. Has the OnePlus 9 Pro and the partnership that OnePlus has with Hasselblad paid off here? Can you see some noticeable improvement? Did it keep up with the Pixel 5? Drop a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching.